went on to the Facebook account and started pulling things off to show all of his travels. And in fact, I think the husband's girlfriend actually made a comment that she knew this was going to make it into court.
You made a snarky post like, you're following us around everywhere.
It's really simple common sense. And we actually give do's and don'ts to our clients when they separate of what to do. First thing to do is remove your former spouse as a friend from Facebook. That's number one. They don't need to see your posts, but don't be naive.
Complain about that one, because sometimes I could see some people trying to complain about that.
Well, you can't really complain about it because you can be removed from somebody's Facebook account. And quite frankly, who wants their former spouse seeing everything they're doing?
Did they block them as well, or just remove
them? Block them completely. Then the next thing that you have to say to yourself when it comes to social media is people need to appreciate social media is evidence that a court is going to accept.
Oh, okay. So the court will accept it.
Absolutely. It's a great piece of evidence because if you think about the old days, somebody would come in as a witness and say, this person told me they said this and this and this. Well, now there's an actual record of what people are saying on Facebook. There's actually one case from one of the Western provinces where a father made all sorts of horrific comments about the mother on Facebook. And what disappointed the court in that particular case was that the child of the parties was a Facebook friend of the father's. So the court looked at it and said, if he's prepared to say this in a form that the daughter could see it in, he obviously can't co-parent with the mother. Okay, so that becomes a real challenge for people, is to realize you got to hold off. And you have to remember, just because you removed your spouse as a Facebook friend, there's a good chance one of your existing friends is also friends with your former spouse. And maybe
block other people as well, like common friends?
Well, it depends how far you want to go. The smartest thing to do is to say, I'm assuming that my former spouse is going to be able to see this account one way or the other. So
okay. What is from Facebook? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to you. It's from someone who's also named Sam. Great name, by the way. Hello, my girlfriend was separated 2 years ago. I met her last year, and they are still in the processing of separation agreement. And they have 2 kids together, aged 10 and 6, and living with her. The man is licensed electrician and working mostly cash. His income is NOA is $2,000 per year. The woman is nurse and her income is over $90K per year. She is 45 and he is 58. She is thinking to quit her job temporarily and staying with the kids. Now he's claiming $2,000 spouse support. Does he have a chance to get it?
Okay, there's multiple things in there. Yeah. So let's begin with the first issue, which is what's his income? Or actually, I'm going to take it a step place. She should not quit her job. Don't quit it. Keep your job, keep working, because if she quits her job, a court is not going to look upon that favorably. The court's going to say that she's intentionally underemployed and she'll be imputed back to the income she had at the job that she quit. 2 wrongs don't make a right. It's a simple adage, but it really holds true. Now, when we talk about the father in this situation who claims he's making $2,000 a year, again, intentional underemployment. He's an electrician. That's a skilled occupation. It's pretty easy to make money. You're going to be successful at convincing a court that he's capable of earning more. The only question is, how much is he capable of earning? $2,000 sounds completely unreasonable. And I would love to look at his financial statement, because one way is you're going to look at his budget and see how much money does he claim he spends. And then you're going to look at his deficit, because obviously you can't live on $2,000 a year. And you're going to wonder how come he hasn't applied for social assistance if he's only making $2,000 a year. And when you look at his budget, you're going to see the shortfall. Then you're going to look at what his assets were in the date of separation and the assets today. Same with debts. And has he depleted assets? Has he increased his debt during that period of time? If he hasn't, well, now he's made your job really simple, because you're going to look at what the deficit is and you're going to say, well, he must be making enough to cover this. And there's a case that says, if you're doing cash and you can prove the other side is, not only do they add back the cash, but then they add back money to cover the taxes he would have had to pay. in order to earn that. So his income is going to go right up. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't. And the best thing this person can do, keep working, argue that position. I've had cases like that. I remember one case I had, it was a really nice case because the husband claimed he made $3,000 a year, but he's been running the same business for 20 years.
Oh,
and,
no.
and it sort of ties into social media because in that particular case, the husband had a website, and on his site, he said, I have had over 20,000 satisfied customers. And his business was the type of business that every customer basically paid the same price. So I said, if you've had 20,000 customers and you've been in business for 20 years, do the math of how many customers he's had. Once you're in that position and you've done the math, you could say, you know what his charge is per customer. And from knowing the charge, I was able to say, well, if I accept your math, sir, your revenue isn't the 20,000 you say, it's actually 200,000 a year. Yeah. And I'll accept what your expenses are. So now I have you at $180,000 plus the gross up. In that particular case, ironically, my client made about 100,000 a year. He then went from saying, I want spousal support to I'm happy, no spousal support, I can live with it. So there was a great example of using something on the web to our advantage. And again, you can picture a social media account, how someone wants to show off all the happy customers they have. You know, I think of the used car dealers as an example, how often they'll post pictures after they sell a car to somebody of another happy customer, another happy customer. And somebody like me would sit there and say, okay, let's print off all his happy customers and look at how much he sold these cars for.
Yeah, social media really can help that along quite a bit.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of really interesting aspects that you can get into from a social media perspective and on the internet where you can mine a lot of information. Here's another easy one as an example. People, when they get a job or are looking for work, usually post it on LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
So picture someone tells me they're unemployed. So I go search their LinkedIn profile. And on their LinkedIn profile, it says they're working. Real obvious. Takes about 5 minutes to find that answer. And then you're writing to the other lawyer, well, tell me about the job they started at this time, because that's what their LinkedIn profile says.
Kicking themselves in the foot.
It's unbelievable that they're not thinking that somebody will actually look at these things.
I'd love to see the look on their face as that's happening. I have a Twitter question. It says, as a separated parent, how should I reply to negative comments on Facebook by wife's friends?
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, don't get in the middle of the fray. Avoid it. At the very most, you can say, there are always two sides of the story, but I don't believe in airing the dirty laundry of my former spouse and I for everybody to see. If they have two kids, we have two kids we both love very much. And I'm sure they wouldn't want to know that their mother and father are airing all of their dirty laundry in public. And just take the high road, because anybody can go spin whatever they want to spin on Facebook or in any form of social media to make negative comments about somebody else. And obviously, if that person's friends are saying it, he's using them in essence almost as a Facebook advocate on their own behalf. And if they're doing that, you need to think about where they're getting their information, because as a lawyer, I would also write to the other side and say to them, you need to tell these people to stop, and you shouldn't be communicating your private and confidential information to these people. Once you've done that, if they continue on in that, you know that person's been put on notice not to do that. And one of the things, we're in a world right now where the courts do not want to see this being aired. Because I can say it, you know, I've said this many times, I'm a divorced parent, and every time I do something like Ask Andrew, or I do one of our video blogs, or I say something, I realize that one day my kids may be on Google and doing a search. They may come onto my website. They may watch this show. They've told me they Google me on occasion. And I have to make sure that I'm not going to say something that I would be embarrassed for them to see, because I wouldn't want to do that to them.
I have a tip there for people, put my social media hat on right now, is if you want to be notified of any time your name is typed into the internet, that's something Andrew's also told me about. There's something called a Google alert, and you just put Google alert into the internet. You put your name in quotes, and anytime your name is mentioned in a news story or anything, Google will send you an email about it. And it's been great for me. I mean, you can put in your names, your children's names, your business name, whatever, or variations of your name as well. It's a very useful free feature from Google.
And it's a wonderful feature when you're the spouse, because I frequently say to my clients when their spouses are self-employed, I want you going on to your former spouse's website at least once a week, because inevitably there's a lot of cases where the person who pays support is crying that times are rough and times are poor and business is bad. And the message they're getting on social media and on the website are completely different. And I tell people, monitor those accounts, watch those accounts, see what is happening with those accounts.
Yeah, and I also heard that the CRA is now looking at people's social media accounts as well. People that say they're broke, now they're looking to see that they're not.
Well, you know, the problem CRA is going to face, because you have this balancing act of some people like to have their celebrity lifestyle on Facebook, of showing that they have the most awesome, incredible lifestyle, and everything they do is a pose and is staged. I mean, I know one guy on Facebook, he claims to be a billionaire.
Yes.
Somehow I really doubt any billionaire would be talking about being a billionaire on Facebook.
No.
They're going to be a little more confidential about that.
Exactly. Well, that's what I always used to say, that if you are a billionaire, or if you say you're a good parent, you don't need to broadcast that you are a good parent or that you're a millionaire. Oh, I have another question on Facebook for you. Let me get there. It's from Megan. I have been divorced over 5 years. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I have shared time with the child 50-50, but my ex has since remarried and has another child and moved far away, so the equal time became difficult. My ex went to court to move to change the parenting schedule, and she was successful. I am a high income earner, and I will be paying her $150 per day in child support, but I have my daughter 39% of the time. Is there any change of reducing child support on a $350,000 income?
Well, there's always a chance, but it sounds like when they went to court and they revisited the schedule, someone counted time to get it to 39%. And that's a critical time, because under the child support guidelines, sharing is when each parent has less than 60% of the time, but more than 40% or more. So the fact that this person ended up with 39% is a message that it was really targeted that way. The second thing is, the leading case on sharing is a Supreme Court of Canada decision called Contino. And in that case, the court talks about, in essence, a cliff effect. So picture if you're at 39%, but all of a sudden, if you got 3 more days with the kids, now you're at 40%. Should child support drop from full child support down to what we would call the set-off, being what the payor pays under the guidelines, less what the recipient would pay under the guidelines? And the court has said, that's only the starting point. We have to look at the conditions, means, needs, and other circumstances of the parties. And there's a concern about that cliff effect, that when someone says, give me the extra 3 days, the other parent's going to say no, because that 3 days may cost me $500 a month. So there is a chance, but it's really going to depend on what happens with the schedule. The best way is if this person, the payor, became the primary caregiver because the child wants to move back here, or the children decide they want to move back with the father. It's unfortunate, because what I would add is mobility are always the hardest cases in family law. When someone says they want to move across the country, I mean, I'm sure my ex would know this, but if she came to me and said she wanted to move to British Columbia, there's no settlement, there's no deal. I would litigate that to the end, because I would never want to go without seeing my kids like that. And I think a lot of parents feel that way, which is very different than an 18-year-old child who says, I want to go to University of British Columbia for a 4-year undergrad degree. I'd probably rather they stay closer to home, but that's a different scenario than a 10-year-old child moving across the country and one parent not having the time with the child, and that child losing out on time with the other parent. So those cases are always the hardest because it's so hard to reach a compromise.
Yes. Now, one other quick question for you is, I find this is with my own personal network of friends, is most of my friends that believe their husbands or wives are cheating, and I think you said this, that most times when they think they are, they usually are spending so much time on Facebook trying to catch them. Do you think it's better suited that they hire someone to actually catch them if they want that, or to get counseling, or to see you first? Like,
well, people come to see, the reason to see me is you're making a decision to end the marriage. I'm not a counselor. Some people may want us as counselors, but the reality is we're there to give you the advice and guide you through the breakup of your marriage. If you're trying to figure out whether your spouse has cheated or not, and whether you want to end your marriage or not because of the cheating, then the smartest thing that you can do, I think, is do your own Facebook research, see if you see something. You're not going to see something obvious. You might see something that is going to give you a lot of signs of things that don't add up. And if you want to hire a private investigator, just like the show we did where David Rosenberg was a guest, hire a private investigator, because maybe you just need to, it's not going to help you in your family law case, but for your own issues, it's going to be able to say, yes, I know they've cheated. Now I'm ready to move on, because this relationship.
Not that I remember thinking that the cost would be quite high, but the cost could actually save you in the long run.
Well,
right away.
But David also said just about every time when a spouse has come to him because they thought their spouse is cheating, they've been right.
That's, yeah, I remembered that from him as well. And I got one more question from Twitter. We're very busy. What do we do with shared social media accounts during separation, like a family Facebook? I mean, like, think of someone with a business that had a Facebook page. When they both are admins to the page, would they split it up like a business asset, or could they do that?
Well, I'm going to start with, don't have joint social media accounts with somebody else. It's just asking for problems. But if you've made that mistake, it's probably registered in one person's name, and that person will probably sees it, and the other person will then be in their lawyer's office complaining that they lost their social media account. So be it. Get new ones, start over. It's one of those things, unless there's a, you equate it to a business. Well, I know when I look at my Facebook page and my website, I believe they help us generate business. So it's important to my business and I wouldn't want to lose it. But if it was my personal Facebook page with my friends, I would probably just go back on Facebook and invest the time at getting my friends back. It's a lot simpler than paying a lawyer at our hourly rates to fight about that.
Set your business up right online on social, because Facebook can become like a very big asset. It can become a valuable asset to you, and not setting it up properly. Like yours is set up properly and most people's are, but not having that hierarchy of control within the page would be important.
Now, we did have a number of questions before we came on the show, and I was going to read one of them out right now. And this one is another, actually, I'm going to skip over a couple of them because we just did a mobility question, but here's a person who's saying, I have a mediation session had a mediation session with my husband on January 30th. And I'm not claiming any of his insurance, pension, saving, and RSP. I only want a share of the house equity, which I know is enough because we refinanced it 5 years ago. Well, the court granted if I ask 20% down payment for my husband for a decent house for me and my kids to start with. Kids are living with him. They're 16 and 19. We bought a property back home, but the property is not in our name yet. And the money I paid for it is from the line of credit and credit card, which is my debt. I'm going to start with, first of all, you should want your share of the insurance if there's a cash surrender value on it. And you should want your share of the pension. Don't walk away from things. Here in Ontario, we deal with an equalization of net family property. That means we look at your net worth on date of separation, less your net worth on date of marriage, subject to other exceptions. If you're both on title of the matrimonial home, then you're clearly going to share in the post-separation increase, which is really important in the way the real estate market in Toronto is right now. So saying I want 20%, to me, that doesn't make sense. What you may be trying to do, and I think what this is more about, is a negotiation, because reading between the lines, you have a 16-year-old and 19-year-old. I'm assuming the 19-year-old has finished high school, so where the child lives isn't that relevant. But if you have a 16-year-old, you may be looking at another year or two of high school. And it could be that the father is saying, well, I want our child to be able to finish in this school catchment. And what you're really saying is, well, let's borrow on the line of credit so I can buy something for myself. That's a negotiated resolution that's being very practical. Otherwise, you're off to court, and at some point that home is going to be sold. And there's guilt factor on the person who's forcing the sale of the home, because they're worried their 16-year-old is going to be mad at them for forcing them out of the home and maybe changing high schools with 1 year left. So there's a lot of things going on there. But keep in mind, it's still a good investment for this person if they believe the real estate market's going up and they're on title for it, because they're going to share in that increased value, and it's not like they're losing out on the market of where the real estate market is right now. I thought that was a really interesting question. And then there's another one I wanted to go over because we had quite a few, which is, I've been living in a common law relationship for the past 6 years. We have a cohabitation agreement based on the house we lived in for the past 6 years. The house is in his name. However, the cohabitation agreement outlines we both paid money into the house and we both paid the mortgage equally. He wants to buy my share out. However, I think he's undervaluing the home. Well, if this person is actually considered an owner of the home in the cohabitation agreement, they may be considered an owner on a beneficial basis, they could go to court and simply force the sale of the home. In Ontario, there is no right of first refusal for one person to buy the other person out of the home unless the cohabitation agreement said so. So the smartest move this person could make, take them to court, force the sale of the home. And if they don't want to agree on a reasonable price, so be it, get it sold. And quite frankly, when someone has a real strong attachment to a property or a house, it gives the person who is selling it a real advantage. I always remember I was once at a mediation, and the other side brought in a appraised value of a home at, say, $400,000, and my client said she's only willing to sell it at a price of $500,000. And the mediator said to me, well, Andrew, they have an appraised value. You don't. Why should we consider your client wanting $500,000? And I said to the mediator, it's really simple. The husband grew up in this home and he really wants this home, and it's really, really important to him. And my client's attitude is, let's sell it. So if he wants it, the extra $100,000 is only going to cost $50,000 out of the wife's share. I think he's going to come up with it. You know what? He did. So it's a matter of not necessarily saying it's the appraised value. It's what you can negotiate. And if you don't like the price, force the sale of it. And if you force the sale of it, especially the way the market is in Toronto right now, you're going to probably get a number you're happy with, because the market is going like crazy. Every month things are going up more and more and more.
I actually have one last question from Twitter.
Okay.
Social media one, of course. Should parents going through divorce monitor their children's Twitter or Facebook accounts?
Well, I'm going to start as a parent. It's probably a good idea to monitor your children's Facebook and Twitter accounts all the time, because there's risk factors. I mean, I just think of my son on his cell phone. He's come to me in the past week twice with text messages from some strange number saying that he's cute and they want to meet up.
What?
And my son isn't even a teenager. So that's why you got to monitor these things, because you don't know who is going on the Facebook or Twitter page, who's communicating. The other thing you want to monitor these accounts for is you want to see what's going on with your kids. Are they doing things that you want them to do, not want them to do? What are they saying? Are they saying negative things about you? Are they saying negative things about your former spouse? Because you want them being in the right direction, and you want them to understand that what they put out in social media is going to live with them for a very long time. I see that we're out of time. Unfortunately, we didn't get to cover all the questions that came in before the show. I think we did cover most of the questions that we've received online during the show. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank Sam for coming on the show today and doing it on this side rather than the other side. And our pleasure to have you. And I want to say the next Ask Andrew show will be on March 16th. That's a Thursday at 1 o'clock. I hope that A lot of people will tune in and bring their questions or send them to us in advance. And we're going to try something new today, which is if anyone has a request for the type of professional they'd like to see as a guest on the next show, send us an email or contact us on Facebook or on Twitter, and we'll be happy to consider that and arrange for that type of professional to be on the next show as a guest. And thank you for watching, everyone.